Hello and welcome to the One-on-One podcast. If you're enjoying the show, consider signing up for the Patreon. There you get ad-free content, early access, exclusive episodes, and monthly supporter hangouts. You can find it at patreon.com/the One-on-One podcast. If you don't like the subscription-based models, there are other ways of supporting the show that are linked in the description. Thank you for tuning in and enjoy this episode.
Welcome to the One-on-One podcast with your host, Juan Ayala.
Welcome to another episode of the One-on-One podcast. I'm your host as always, Juan. Make sure to follow the show on social media at the One-on-One podcast on all social media platforms. If you're listening to this on YouTube, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. And if you're listening to this on the RSS feed, make sure to leave us a 5-star review. It's free. And for those that want more of the show on a more frequent basis, want exclusive episodes, make sure to check out the Patreon, patreon.com/the One-on-One podcast. On this episode, we welcome Brett Lewis. We cover a few different topics. Talk about the organic simulation, Gnosticism, religion, psychology, the mind, Rand Corporation, mind viruses, manifestation, AI, all that good stuff. You know how it is. So make sure to check out Brett's work. And thank you all for tuning in. I appreciate you. Enjoy this episode. Welcome to the show, Brett. How you doing, man?
Doing great, Juan. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, for sure. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, Brett, and where people can find you and what you're all about, man?
Yeah, so you can find me right now on YouTube, Brett Lewis, and then on alternative channels, Brett Bender. I dealt with a little bit of trouble from YouTube for discussing things along the lines of Isaac Cappy. So that's why I have two names, two personas right now. And what I do on my channel is I combine real world analysis along with the metaphysical. It's the combination of the masculine material and then the feminine metaphysical. It's something that our society has gotten too far away from, where they're just focusing on the material with this religion of science that we're finding. So I'm out here to correct that issue. So I analyze basically how the control structure works and how things operate in just like a more of almost a simulation, Gnostic theory kind of sense.
So are we in a computer simulation or...
See, I like to think of it more as like an organic simulation. Like on my YouTube channel, I have something, it's called the frequency matrix is what I call it. Basically, like human brains, we're set up like radios and like we tune to whatever the dominant frequency is. And right now we're tuning to a frequency that's, not ideal. I call it the SAD frequency, which is an acronym for Satan, Ahriman, and the Demiurge, when we should be more focused on a God frequency. And the reason that I put it in an acronym like that is because people have these weird stigmas with each one of those words. Like you say, oh, Satan, you sound like a Bible thumper. Demiurge, the Christians don't like that because it's Gnostic. But at the end of the day, they all describe the same thing. Mm-hmm. And that's what people are way too focused on right now. And I actually go into it further by dividing people on this material plane into 3 different archetypes. Are you familiar with like the Gnostic book, the Pistis Sophia?
The Pistis Sophia, yeah. Gnosticism is what I cut my teeth on, I guess. It's my bread and butter. That's what I first started going in on. So I'm very familiar with Gnosticism, yes.
Nice, good. Yeah, because in that book, it talks about that there's 3 different people. There's the helix, the psychics, and the pneumatics. Now, the helix, they're the people that are just obsessed with like the material realm. They just think of, basic things like the entertainment industry, the sports game. stuff like that. And then the psychics are the ones who are like kind of know that something's going on, but they're not quite sure what. And then the pneumatics are the ones that are obsessed with truth and they just want to gain gnosis and spread knowledge and stuff like that. Now, that's basically what the PC Sophia says, but I've taken it like maybe into a slightly different direction. Where, you know, most people, they talk about NPCs. Majority of people are basically helix or whatnot. I disagree. And I believe that the majority of people are more like psychics. And I believe that the helix are kind of like the vacated ones spiritually. And they're the ones who act like psychopaths. They're the ones who, like, when we were dealing with mask mandates, would freak out and like almost like attack other people who weren't wearing a mask. But that encompasses a very slim minority of people. I'd say the majority of people, they were just going on to get along. They didn't actually like hate people who were going against these agendas, these psyops that we're constantly hit with. And in that line of thinking, it's like that actually gives us a chance to get more people on the pneumatic side, the truther side. Because how on earth are we going to change this world if we think that the majority of our brothers and sisters are NPCs, are robots, are helix? And I don't just say this because I'm trying to be overly optimistic, but it's just what I've noticed, that if you get someone one-on-one, despite like how knowledgeable they are of the outside world, you can really get through to them. Is this something you've encountered in your life, or do you think the majority of people are just NPCs?
No, I don't go as far as that. I've talked about it before on my show, the NPC theory and how it relates to simulation. Now, I discuss a lot of things on my show, and I don't 100% believe everything that I talk about, right? I mean, I'm here just to discuss and have interesting conversations. And when you start to get into that realm, it can be sort of dehumanizing, but it would make sense from the simulation point where there are NPCs. Now, the argument for that and the evidence, some of the evidence that people present is some people don't have an inner monologue. There is a large percentage of the population that doesn't have an inner monologue, that doesn't think inside their head before, and the thoughts that they're thinking is just what's coming out of their mouth. I don't know about you, but I can think in my head before I say anything, but some people apparently can't. Now, is that proof that they don't have a consciousness or whatever it is? I actually did an episode last night. I have this other show called the Occult Book Club where we talk about different obscure pieces of literature all throughout history. And it was a story about Descartes and how he allegedly figured out how to transmute his soul and step out of his soul. And while he was out of his soul, out in outer space, for those that want to believe in outer space or not, or this other dimension, they were going into other dimensions on different planets, on different celestial spheres. And it plays into the Gnostic view that every single orbit is a different dimension ruled by a different archon or demon or whatever it is, this force. And as he was out of his body, astral projecting or whatever it may be, back on his body, there was a little homunculus. I don't know if you've ever talked about the homunculus or know about it, but this little watcher, for a lack of a better term, and that's part of talismanic magic. Like if you read the Picatrix and a lot of these grimoires, where you're able to call upon this entity to watch over your body as you're astral projecting or as you are exploring this other environment. They watch over your body to make sure that that empty vessel doesn't get taken over by something else. Now, the topic of the homunculus is important in this because Crowley wrote about it, and he wrote about how up until the second month of gestation, a fetus doesn't have a soul. And there was a way to invoke a other worldly spirit, right, into this fetus of this woman through a ceremonial sex magic and et cetera, which is, again, tied to Gnosticism as well, sex magic, because they were accused of doing all these heretical things, right?
Yeah, the compounded Sicily there, especially.
Yeah. So this idea that another worldly force can take over your body and you look like a regular human being. I mean, it's a very controversial thing to talk about, because I do think that it goes back to what Plato talked about. I do think that some people are in that cave, and not because it's all by design, dude. I mean, that's what Plato's Republic was about. It was about not conforming to society. and falling in line because he understood that the art spoke to the soul, whatever that is. The soul is a real thing. And as long as he kept that under wraps and structured society and allowed people to intake what they wanted, and, you know, the philosopher kings or the elites or the lizard people or the Illuminati, whatever you want to call them, the reptilians, whatever they are, as long as they were able to control what people were intaking, it would keep that soul at bay. It would keep it down to where if you received inspiration of some sort, you were wanting to break out. And that's exactly what happens. We see that in the movies like The Matrix and movies like this, where he breaks out of the Matrix and he is able to defeat, you know, in one of the timelines that he's on, he's able to defeat them or whatever it is. And there's that one character, right? The one that eats the steak, where he goes, ignorance is bliss. And I know this steak is fake, but I'm still going to eat it. I'm still going to have a good time. And I think that as long as people don't achieve that platonic savior where you're able to separate yourself from this materialistic world, it's all done by design, bro. And I mean, it is a very Gnostic thought, because that's their whole premise, that the demiurge was mad at us because we ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and we learned that we were in that simulation, that false reality, that veil that was put over our eyes. And that's what pissed them off. Not that we ate from the trees, like that we learned about what's really going on. So I've talked about it at length, bro. I mean, and I think this is why I wouldn't go as far to say that some people are NPCs. I think that maybe their consciousness has been suppressed on some level, and through gnosis, through whatever, and gnosis is whatever's sacred to you, whatever knowledge you find on your own that wakes you up. That's the beautiful thing about Gnosticism, where it's like it's your own journey. It's phenomenology. Whatever experience you have is your thing, and nobody can define that. And that's why I was in organized religion for a long time, and I had things forced upon me. It was programming through trauma, being told that if I didn't accept Jesus in my life, I was going to have my head cut off after the Antichrist and the rapture happened and all this stuff. And then once you start looking into other texts and you go, wait, so why is there the Gospel of Judas and why is he the good guy in that story? And you notice, like, oh, there's every single idea that you can possibly think of. There's an opposite to that idea, wherever it is. You know, some people say, oh, Jesus is the true God. Well, somebody's saying Satan is the true God somewhere, right? There's always going to be that duality. And I think that's all done by design in order to really confuse people. Now, I don't want to demean anyone's religion, because I do think religion is important because it gives people a structure. It gives people a purpose. And that's what Nietzsche talked about, right? God is dead. He wasn't celebrating God's death. He was like, God is dead and we killed him, you know, and that leads to nihilism. So we need God, you know, we need and I still believe in God, right? I still believe in, you know, I accepted Jesus in my life. Now, I'm not a practicing Christian, but I do believe in a God, and I do believe that
a lot of Christians, they misunderstand Gnosticism. Like, I talk about the frequency matrix, and there's something so powerful about just the words Jesus Christ or Christ is King. There's so much power in that frequency of saying that. And like you forget, like, Gnostic is a sect of Christianity. Like, Gnostics and Christians are on the same side. But I know a lot of Christians are really opposed. They almost think it's like evil or something because they're not understanding, like, we're on the same page, guys. We really are, in a way. We're in this battle against like the evil psychotic forces that are at work here. And yeah, you know, I said the majority of people are psychics, and I think that they're resonating with the helic psychopathic frequency instead of the pneumatic Christ consciousness frequency. So that's why that's manifesting in so many people acting like NPCs. It's not because deep down in their soul they're just an automaton. It's because they're not being led by good shepherds. Could you imagine what this world would be like if we were led by philosophy kings instead of people like, you know, demented Joe Biden? Like, it would be totally different. Imagine if that was in our mainstream culture. They would go along with it. That's why I believe that if we were in a situation where shit really hit the fan, you know, they would wake up to this. But the thing is, comfort kills. Yep. It's what makes us depressed. It's what makes us believe nonsense. But if you take that comfort away, you immediately go right back to God.
Yeah, that's the ultimate red pill, I think. Right? God. At the end of that, there's really nothing else. And I've had this conversation with a lot of people where, yeah, I mean, I enjoy, and I have a podcast about, and I have conversations with people, right? And a lot of people will say, well, if you're talking about these sort of things, you're inviting certain negative energies into your life. And I agree with that, right? Because once you fall into a certain ideology, I believe that people manifest their own realities, and not, maybe not in a magical type of woo woo way, but once you, how you're saying, once you fall in line into a certain type of thinking, you live it, enter this reality tunnel. And not until something of a traumatic experience comes through and shakes that your paradigm and shifts it, are you able to step out of that reality. And I talked to you about Gustav Le Bon, because I know you're talking about like social engineering and how people are susceptible to ideas. Well, there's the idea of like a mind parasite. I just did an episode on zombies in the occult, and in, I want to say it's, I forgot which country. It was Haiti, I believe.
Yeah,
Haiti.
probably Haiti. Yeah.
In Haiti, they are able to turn people into zombies, and it's not what you would think. It's not like, oh, they're doing necromancy and they're doing black magic or voodoo or doing whatever other thing that they're doing. No, it's the idea and the acceptance that in that society that's a real thing. So when somebody believes that they're being turned into a zombie, they actually do, and they manifest that, and they do turn into a zombie. And it's like a psychological pandemic like this. And it's funny that we're talking about this because I was talking to another friend of mine, and Nick Hinton, he talks about like the mind virus and all these things. And Jordan Peterson was just on Joe Rogan talking about psychological pandemics, that they're a real thing, like the satanic panic. It's all done in cycles, the satanic panic and whatever other thing. And I brought up Gustav Le Bon because he was the father of crowd psychology. Now, a crowd, and I've covered this in the Occult Book Club, I forgot what episode, but a crowd can be a nation, can be a neighborhood, can be a city, can be a small group of people. There's criteria on what a crowd consists of. And there's a whole bunch of psychology involved, and science, or seance, as I like to call it. I believe it's the same thing. But at the very core of it, Le Bon talks about how there is a metaphysical aspect to it all. That when people get together, there's something he called the contagion that weaves its way through the crowd and turns people into this animalistic, primal nature that we see when they get together. And a crowd becomes its own sentient thing. It becomes as smart as the dumbest person in it. And that's why you see people that wouldn't act a certain type, they wouldn't otherwise act that way by themselves, and they're acting that way because they're in that crowd, because there's something that's activated in their psyche or their mind through this metaphysical thing that we don't see, and it just turns them, and they go berserk. They go crazy. They start to, like you said, attack people. And we saw the videos and all the riots and everything was going on. It was very disturbing.
And do you know what the antidote to that is?
I don't know.
I believe it's allowing dissonance. It's allowing the archetype of the jester to flourish. It's allowing people to critique the mainstream dominant cultural narrative, to open people's eyes to, wow, I never thought about that before. But now we live in this society where it's dogmatic. You can't do that. And I think that there's this one essay that was written by Gillian Russell, who's a philosophy professor. And it was titled The Epistemic Viciousness and the Martial Arts. And epistemic coming from epistemology, which is a theory of knowledge. It's how you know things. And basically, this was about how in the 70s, karate was real popular. And these karate masters, they made it seem like if you learn my skill set, you'll be invincible. You'll be unstoppable. Then the 90s came around with the revolution of MMA. And all these senseis in karate were getting their ass kicked by these MMA guys. And they're just like, whoa, this goes against all my teachings. Like they're being exposed that it was all theory and none of it was really practical. And then it gave people this understanding like, wow, if you're stuck inside these little tiny theories and you're not getting input from the outside world, then that's what creates this idea that you think you're right, but you're not right at all. That's why we need to allow other ideas to promulgate throughout our society.
It's what Mike Tyson said, that the internet has gotten people used to not getting punched in the face.
Yeah,
So
right.
you get a whole bunch of, and that's the thing, because I believe the internet is it is, and they literally call them portals. And I do think it's another portal. It's a portal to another dimension of some sorts where people, it's a safe space. But what you're talking about, embracing this critique and this non-dogmatic view, well, that's the thing. That's some people's culture, the whatever the mainstream is, and some people believe whatever is being fed to them, and it's a parasitic relationship that some people have with these governmental entities, where they want to crawl up in the totalitarian womb of this entity and just be there because it feels safe, right? And that's, if there is the whole toxoplasmosis, the T. Gandhi virus, that literally shapes people's political views. And where do we see that the most? We see that in places with higher traffic. So that's why larger corporations, larger cities, you have a more left-leaning ideology. They're more leftist, they're more liberal, and sometimes it's quite literally, people can't help it, because there is actual viruses that will quite literally shape the way that you vote. And I mean, I don't know if that's a conspiracy, because I mean, I know we've all been through it. 2020 was crazy with this whole narrative that they pushed upon us. Now, a lot of people say that was a conspiracy, that they man-made that, et cetera, et cetera. We're never going to know, but there are literally, it's been proven that some viruses will shift the way that you vote and that you look at.
Oh, are you talking about how maybe like parasites can affect your mentality?
Oh, 100%. T. Gandhi does affect people's mentalities, yes.
Yeah, I've been. Would you recommend any sort of parasitic cleanse? Like, are you knowledgeable on this?
I'm not, dude. I just know
I'm afraid to try it, because I've seen things on the internet. I'm like, I don't know if I want to do this, if I want to purge myself.
I don't advocate for any of that sort of thing. The only philosophy really that I push on the show is just do your own research, right? Do your own, think for yourself. Don't take what I'm saying.
Because it's like, why is it, Juan, that people like you and me are right about all these crazy things that have been happening recently? Like from the pandemic to, I'm going to bring up the Russia situation too. I don't know if you talked about it on your channel, but a lot of people right now are talking about the study done by the Rand Corporation recently, which was like this really elite Pentagon funded think tank, and they use it for the defense industry. What they came up with was that this Russo-Ukraine war is unwinnable. Like, Russia is going to win. Like, there's no point in even continuing it. It's like game over right now. And it's like, I've been talking about that on my channel for a very long time.
What was it called? The Rand, what?
The Rand Corporation. Yeah, the recent study on the Russo-Ukraine war. And it's like, how come I was right? Because it's like, Russia faced slight pushback in the beginning, so they enacted like a partial mobilization of 300,000 reservists. I mean, if it came to it, Russia would have had a full like wartime economy, but they didn't even have to get to that point. And they were never going to give up Crimea, because Crimea is like their access to the Black Sea, which gives them access to Eurasia and all that stuff. So it's like, I knew that they weren't going to give up Crimea, like NATO said. And NATO pushed this like, oh, it was 100% Ukraine is going to win. But then when you look at the news, they just have overtaken Soledar. They're about to take Bakhmut, which are regions that they said it's impossible for them to take. And it's like, I made this other video called 2023, the year of the white rabbit. There's going to be so many things that are happening in this year that'll make the average person look down the rabbit hole, because it's like, not only is Russia succeeding in this war, which goes against the mainstream, but all these people, they're talking about how they were injured from the vaccine. It's getting to the point where I can comfortably go up to my family members who were so gung-ho about the vax, and I can basically say I was right, and they can't really disagree with me. Like, that is crazy. That is such a huge switch from 2020. We're in a totally different world now.
And I think that's all by design, bro. 100%. Because it's not that we're right. I mean, a broken clock is right 2 times a day. And I think that
we're right about other things too, is what I'm saying. What are you saying?
I think that a lot of it is like self-fulfilled prophecy type of thing, right? Where if enough people, yeah, exactly, because that's one of the things about the truther community it's great and all, but there's some people that think that nukes are fake. There's some people that don't think space is real. There are some people that believe the world is flat. Whatever it is, the earth is flat. Those are in the same community that we're in. And there is a divide even within this community. And
I don't think there should be a divide. I think the important thing is making sure that you're amongst people that are off the dominant cultural narrative frequency. Like, that's why it's like, I'm not going to be like mean to anyone who has these differing opinions.
Yeah, neither am I. I mean, I'm an open book, and I'm
Sorry,
open.
go on. What were you saying?
I said I'm an open book, and I reserve the right to change my mind. But I believe that a lot of the things that we talk about are like manifestation, where you come together and you talk about it enough times. If you can keep talking about it and keep pushing it out there, and that's getting woo, right? Like, oh, there's no way you can manifest things.
No, I agree with you. I do. And the thing is, like, pneumatics, which is basically another word for truthers, you could almost say it's like autistic people with good pattern recognition skills. It's like all of us, what we have in common, where we were extra creative as children across the board. Ask that question. They're like, yeah, I loved painting or making videos and stuff like that. And it's like, I feel like with that creative energy, it makes us even like more efficient at manifesting our world. So you get enough of us truthers together talking about our theories. I think it's more powerful than people who don't really expand their minds in that way.
Some people are too busy, bro. I mean, I have a family, I have a full-time job, and I think that a lot of people don't give a shit either. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, they just want to live. They just want to be left alone. They don't want to think about a lot. And I go through those fits too, bro, where I just want to unplug and not want to learn anything, because I'm constantly either researching or looking something up or talking to somebody about whatever, and it can get draining. But I think that, again, done by design, we're put in this structured reality. I don't know how to label it, but I think that, and one of the things that set me off, dude, was there was a movie, and I think that art imitates life, and that the subconscious bleeds through art. There was this movie that was recommended to me by a friend, and it was released November of 2022, so fairly recently. And I was watching that movie, and how you're saying, because this year, the year of the rabbit, everyone's going to look down the rabbit hole. The movie touched on quite literally almost all of the subjects that I've talked about on my podcast. And sometimes I think, dude, I make breakthroughs like, oh, this is crazy. This is a crazy idea. And this is why I'm saying it's done by design, and I think it's cyclical, right? It comes in waves. I've talked about Pythagorean palaces. I've talked about the Pythagorean brotherhood. I've talked about Pythagoras. I don't know anybody else who's talking about Pythagoras in this circle, or even Pythagorean palaces, which is a whole nother idea. And dude, sure enough, lo and behold, this movie had a concept, and they were about the Pythagorean brotherhood and all these things and alternate dimensions and all. And I said, what the... Dude, I thought I was unique. You know what I'm saying? I thought I was onto something, but yet here it is on a movie. Now, I don't know if, you know, I could say the typical, oh, they're watching me, right? They're watching me.
Dude, that happens to me too. Like the other day I was driving down the road and I was thinking of the idea of like, oh, prison planet, is that legit? Like, we got to escape this material realm. And then I see a sign for a store called The Great Escape. And I was like, wow. It's like, and I get synchronicities like that, dude.
And think about that. You're talking about The Great Escape. Well, they have escape rooms now, right? Like, what are they prepping us for with all these things, and how you're saying the war and how they're pushing some sort of narrative? I think it's all orchestrated, dude. William Shakespeare said the world's a stage. And I think that these people that are put in, it goes back to Le Bon. Le Bon said that people follow these figures because they put out a prestige. Just, again, a metaphysical thing where you and I right now, we're going to have thousands of people listen to this, and we put out a certain prestige because they're listening to us. So well,
that's in the book Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, which I was going to bring up to you. It's about social engineering, and Mr. Rothschild, Nathaniel Rothschild, had a little segment in there where he said, when you assume the appearance of power, people give it to you. And that is his fundamental energy principle, he called it. That's why we see people in white lab coats and everyone listens to them. The people with the PhDs in foreign intelligence. And
you look good. You're in a suit, bro. You're all professional.
I'm wearing my suit, you know, because I'm listening to Mr. Rothschild.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, mean, I bought this thing and I never have an excuse to wear it because there's more like funerals than weddings these days. So I got to put it on.
But you know what I'm saying? Like people will, because I get messages every single day. I'm like, dude, don't put me on a pedestal. Don't do your own research. I'm just here to spread a word.
And I think that too. That's a fundamental thing in my channel is like, you can't really trust and look to anybody but yourself. All the power is inside of you. Yeah,
exactly. And I don't know if I would go as far as to say that there is a way to break out of whatever we're in. I think that there is a way to there, and I'm not going to say coexist, but I think there's a way of, because we've always said, why do these elites have so much money and so much power? Well, there's one thing to know that you're in a game. There's one thing to know that you're playing Monopoly, and there's another thing not to know that you're playing Monopoly. And I think that these people understand. Now, if I always relate everything to the occult, I talk about the occult a lot, and I do believe that these people in power maybe perhaps are in touch with entities outside of this, of space and time or whatever it is, and maybe they are being controlled by something higher. I mean, we've seen that, right? We have Baphomet, the Cathars, and a lot of other things, shady stuff. You know, you have John D, Edward Kelly, and all these guys that were talking to things, and now you bring it in to the AI, which is the god of a lot of people. And I know you talked about the AI, and one of the guys that freaked me out was one of your latest videos about the World Economic Forum. That guy was being serious, huh? About being quite literally able to control people.
It is a serious thing. That's why I think AI is actually the Antichrist. And I got a revelation the other day where I think, you know how like the elite societies of the past, they were known for being into the occult, and they would use these black scrying mirrors, which look just like our cell phones and our computers. I think that the internet is the occult, and it was the elites. They got together and they're like, we will unleash the esoteric occult onto the masses with the internet. It's just the transition of that spiritual energy in a modern era. That's what the internet is.
Yeah, and that's why I said it's a portal. They call it a portal.
Yeah.
You know, there's the gateway computer, and the scary part is, dude, that some people quite literally, I don't know if you've ever done VR or the metaverse.
I did it like back in the 90s. My friend had a VR thing. It was very rudimentary.
I'm talking about like right now, Oculus, like the Oculus.
No.
There are people, and they make entire full feedback, haptic feedback suits where you put on this vest, and wherever they're touching you in the game, you feel it, right? There are people who literally are on there all the time, 24 hours a day. They have sex in VR. I've been to a Golden Dawn temple where they do rituals in VR. So they're literally using not only to augment their magical abilities, they're having sex on there. They're doing everything on there. And it goes like the movie Avatar, where the dude gets tired of his real body, right? He gets tired of it. He's not eating. He's going straight into the avatar body. I think that the movies, bro, that they put out, how I said earlier, art imitates life. I think that their thoughts, and I call them cinemagicians, because they do warp people's perceptions and people's realities. During the Great Depression, 1929, there was a push for cinema. They had Dracula, they had Frankenstein, 1930s. They had The White Zombie. They had all the greatest movies ever created during one of the darkest financial and economic times of the United States. Now that's weird, because I said, how is it that we had the AMC thing going on, right? And I think this is why they don't let theaters die. This is an idea that I have, because it goes back to that cave symbolism, the alchemist cave, and we know that a lot of secret societies use caves for their ritual rites. Well, during the 1930s, 1920s, theaters didn't go out of business. Why? Because people were living through these movies. They were going there and being transported to another reality, because the reality that they were living was shit. So the only place they could go to is what? A simulacra of a cave. You go there at night, like a secret society, and hush, you sit down in this dark room, and they do what? They flash a bunch of sigils in front of you, a whole bunch of lights. Well, I had Jay Widener on the show, and he's like, as a director, that's a very effective technique. That's a very effective technique where you're able to quite literally a sigil. What is a sigil? Well, a sigil is a mandala. What is a mandala? It transports your consciousness, or it transports your soul. And a corporation, what do they use? They use sigils, bro. McDonald's, Burger King, Taco Bell, all these places, they use these sigils. And you know automatically, bro, from just looking at the colors.
Yeah.
Oh, that's McDonald's, that's Burger King. Just from looking at the logo or the little tones that they play, right? Like the Taco Bell bell. It's like the, what was that, Pavlov's dog where they
like
ring
bum, 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 the news doing that. That's a little spell too.
Yeah, dude, 100%.
And it's like, dude, you'll look at the most like impressive corporations and they all have esoteric occult symbolism, even Mr. Beast, who has the most successful YouTube channel right now. And on the internet, a lot of people are talking about how in the book of Revelations, the beast comes down and performs great, beautiful miracles. And what has he done recently? He cured 1,000 people's blindness. But not only that, but they say that the beast will be a leopard with a scar that he healed. Mr. Beast's logo is literally a leopard with a scar across its face. And it's like, dude, this guy has tapped into some occult energy, whether he knows it or not.
Oh, yeah.
I'll take it even further and say that there's some esoteric circles that say, oh, the beast will be born in 1998 because 666 times 3 is 1998. That's also the year he was born.
Yeah, his origins are shady, and like I've seen some of the videos where he said Logan Paul, like I don't know.
Yes, that was the ritual, like a million times or something. Yeah, he didn't eat or go to the bathroom for 24 hours.
Yeah, and those, I think that, and we could be saying this, right? I'm not trying to say that
It's just fun to talk about. I'm not saying it is or not.
I'm not saying he is an occultist or not, but that's why I do believe that there are ways to align yourself in this reality to where you're able to leverage things for your own benefit. Now, that maybe might cross over to woo-woo territory, might not. But I believe that it's done through mathematics. It's done through equations, and that's why a lot of occultists like Crowley, they have the Kabbalah, and they talk about how Kabbalah is a way to deconstruct reality, and that's why they would align their names with certain numbers. You have gematria, and I think that is to wear it as a sort of talisman. Like a lot of these guys, their names are talismans. Their family history, if you look at a lot of them, they have lines that go back to hundreds of years, right? And lo and behold, like Parsons, and on his mom's side, on his dad's side, one of his great grandmothers or something like that was part of some witch trials because she was the witch of Northampton, I believe it was. So Parsons itself was this like magical name, and I think they wear that, right? And maybe we give them power by thinking that they are all woo-woo. You know what I'm saying? Like how I said earlier, how a lot of these in the truther community, we kind of manifest these things. Well, what if we're powering that egregore? What if we're powering that?
We are.
You know what I'm saying?
We definitely are. That's why it's like, it's dangerous to call them the elite or the controllers. I usually just call them the top of the pyramid because I don't want to give them that power. And I've seen these studies where it's like, you look at all these elite members, they're born on like 11 days, a lot of them. And people speculate like they probably have C-sections during that time to make sure that the numerology lines up and that their babies are given this power being born on certain days. And I heard Gary, the numbers guy, talk about this. And he was also saying like Andrew Tate. So he got famous during the year of the tiger, and he is a tiger year. And then he's like, it's going to all fall apart for him at the end of the year because the next one is the year of the rabbit. And the rabbit and the tiger are ideologically opposed to one another. And all of that definitely happened.
Yeah, he was in the... I don't really pay attention to a lot of these influencers, and people really... they blow things out of proportion. I've always said if it doesn't affect me directly, as long as people don't hurt children and leave the kids out of it, you can worship Cthulhu for all I care. You can do whatever happens between two consenting adults is whatever happens between two consenting adults. My issue is when they drag kids into it. That's my
my
problem.
issue is when they drag kids into it and then just like weirdly push it as like the focus of our culture. Like, don't you prefer it when like, trans and gay was sort of like a punk thing on the outskirts? Like that made it kind of like cool in a way. And now it's like, oh, it's on a Burger King logo. It's like, it's lame now. Now it's the HR department. It's like,
Well, because the collective conscious will eat people alive, literally eat the whole cancel culture that we've experienced, this phenomenon where we're, and I think it's powered again. A lot of these people, for example, the whole Twitter scandal with Musk, and if you look at Twitter is such a cesspool. I don't even use Twitter. I will every now and again when somebody tweets me, I'll retweet it or I'll like it, whatever, every now, because I get the notifications on my phone, but I don't actively go looking for posting on Twitter because it is a cesspool. And I think a lot of those people are fake, bro. I think a lot of those things are bots in order to push engagement and in order to look. I've been attacked before, not attacked, but I've been, there's like, for example, I'll post a video that will get however many views on, reel. And the comments will be like similar, like, oh, this guy didn't take his meds or whatever. One recently where I talked about the shape-shifting werewolves, where I said I believe that the elites are able to, part of the werewolf lore is that they're able to warp your reality real time. So you see a person, but behind that is a werewolf. So you can relate that to Dogman, you can relate that to whatever you want to relate it to. And all the comments were about how I wasn't taking my schizophrenic medicine or my meds or whatever. And when I see things like that, where it's a bunch of random people just in succession, just commenting like similar stuff one after another, I'm like, are those people even real? I mean, I can say that on the internet. Now in reality, I mean, some people do. It seems like there's nobody home sometimes, but you don't know their situation, right? I mean,
well, yeah, they're trying to push this false consensus that if you question the dominant cultural narrative, you're weird, you're the bad guy. When in reality, that's not really true. Like, even my family, who's totally closed off to this, I think they're like a little bit like entertained and think it's novel when I start discussing these subjects. Like, they don't think I'm crazy or anything for it. I think they think I'm like more intelligent than my other sibling. Honestly, it's like, I don't think they think of me as an idiot or anything. So that's why it's like I've been telling people, like, don't be afraid anymore to just like calmly speak your mind, because even in 2020, I was like, I don't want to push back and tell people about the vaccines. I did a little bit, but I feel like I could have done a lot more. But now we're reaching a point in time where it's like we're proven right a lot. So just feel confident enough to bring this up, because that's why nothing changes, because everybody just stays quiet. That's why we're in these echo chambers, because, they'll argue and say, well, Brett, you're in your echo chamber. It's like, well, not really, because I'm inundated by the mainstream media constantly. I can't possibly escape it. It's everywhere. So I know what the mainstream consensus is. The difference is they don't know what like the intellectual consensus is, because the intellectuals have been pushed to the sideline of our society and ostracized.
the closest thing to mainstream media that I consume is probably every now and again I'll play Alex Jones.
Yeah.
Just to see what the feel is that day. And I mean, he's always on sale mode, so I'll usually last maybe like half of the first hour, because on my podcast feed it'll come in like 4 parts, like hour 1, hour 2, hour 3. Usually I just listen to the first hour. Maybe sometimes I get through it, sometimes I don't, because again, it's just another form of propaganda, dude. And that's why I keep an open mind. I talk about things that I find interesting, because how I mentioned earlier at the beginning, there's always going to be an opposite side to everything. No matter what you could possibly think of, there is an opposite to that idea, right? And the religion to me was like, I was like, hey, I'm going to hell in somebody else's religion, and they're going to hell in mine. Mm-hmm. Why is our guy the guy? Why is our guy right? That's the things that I would always ask. And there was never an answer. There was never a straight up answer. It was always like, oh, it's just because it's like, there's how many denominations of Christian? 40,000? What are you talking about? Why? Oh, because the people over there, they don't speak in tongues and they don't dance around, and our people do. I'm like, okay. And I've seen miracles. I mean, I've seen miracles in front of me. I went Pentecostal, bro. They dance around, they jump, and they do all this crazy shit. I've seen it firsthand. I'm not saying that and that's why I said I believe in God. Now, what I don't believe is organized religion, because it's a brokered experience now. It's not about, and that's why the Gnostics were killed. And anybody in history that went against the mainstream narrative, anybody, was always usually killed. That's why it's his story, to the victor the spoils. And so when the Gnostics were like, hey, listen, dude, you can achieve divinity on your own. And how you said that, it's like that was the underground Christianity at the point. But then even if you look, there's more than 50 sects of Gnosticism, where
Yeah.
some of them worship
Yeah.
the serpent in the Garden of Eden. So
Right,
even they're fucked up, and even they're twisted because it's just human nature. And I think, and I've always said this, and I've preached this, that I think that we're all on to the puzzle pieces, right? We all have parts of the puzzle, but they're all jumbled up and fucked up, and we can't we can't pinpoint where they all go. If you look at all the gods, they're all the same all throughout history, just different names. And some gods got syncretized together, and you see it now. You know what I'm saying? 1,000 years from now, bro, I want to see if we're still doing Christianity or whatever it is. You know what I'm saying?
I know, and that's why I've told people like the suppression of Gnosticism was very much on purpose. Like the dominant control structure back in the day was the Vatican Church, and they killed off the Cathars, the Knights Templar, for being Gnostics. And it's like, what do we see today? It's the Church of Science. So why don't we bring back that revolution of the Gnostic spirit, which is at the very fundamental core revolutionary? It's rebellious because Gnostics, they question the archons, they question the dominant control structure, and they talk about the importance of God's law instead, which is what our world needs.
Yeah, I think that I'm not gonna say what I think the world needs, because I think that there are a lot of things in this world that we need to get right before we can even begin to. I mean, we can't even agree on a lot of things, bro. I mean, the early church, you're talking about the Vatican, the early church, I mean, there was wars over which type of bread to use for the Eucharist. You know what I'm saying? Like these people couldn't even agree amongst themselves, and they're the ones that they had the upper hand always. They were able to win, so they stayed in power. And I mean, they wiped everybody out. And anybody who opposed them, they were killed. I mean, and
You just
that's
gave me such a big epiphany when you said that, how they would keep them fighting over stupid stuff like the bread. That's what they do to us now with woke ideology politics, is they keep the lower class looking down instead of up, bickering over MAGA supporters and liberals. And they're making it be a culture war instead of it being a class war, which is like what we really need to actually change things.
And I think there's a spiritual war going on too, bro. I mean,
Yes,
it's I forget which Bible verse it is. It's not a war of the flesh and blood. It's a war of,
against the principalities of darkness.
Exactly, and the powers above, and they know that. And that's why some people are like, oh well, and again, it might be the occult. It might be some sort of aspect to that where they're able to control your soul, right? And I know it's gonna get woo-woo, but some people are like, oh, I don't believe in that stuff. Well, it doesn't matter. Your soul might believe in it, and we know for a fact that there is something more to this existence. And bro, I've always thought about this. Like sometimes I'll be driving out and I'll go, man, is it all bullshit? Is it all like, why do we interpret symbols? Why do we talk about different ancient gods? Why do we question everything? Why is it all bullshit? What if there's nothing? My dad died 4 times, right? He had a heart attack. He died 4 times. And the first thing I asked him when he came back, when he was good, said, so how was it, bro? You died 4 times, man. You were out for 45 minutes. We were doing CPR on you. You were gone, bro. You would come back and go right back out for 45 minutes straight. What'd you see? I didn't see nothing. I saw nothing. He's like, I just remember waking up here, going to the hospital, driving to the hospital because he had pain. And he had the heart attack at the hospital. That's the only thing that really saved him. But when I asked him, I said, me being me, right? And talking about all these woo-woo subjects and the transmutation of the soul and even Pythagoras, metempsychosis, reincarnation, all these different things. He didn't remember anything, bro. Maybe, okay. And maybe you could say, well, he wasn't ready. He wasn't aligned on that frequency to see anything. He didn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. He's not the most religious guy, but he died. Clinically died. The actual definition of death.
Well, that's why people say in the NDE community, an important test to do is to try to remember your dreams. Keep a dream journal, and that's the key to helping you in the next life or an astral projection. Yeah, but maybe there is nothing. We don't know.
And that's the thing. So they make us fight over whatever it is, but I don't know if you've ever seen. I was listening to Mr. Ballin on my drive back from Tennessee, and he talked about this account of this Indian lady who I don't know if she was Indian or not, but part of somewhere over there, and they talked about how she had died, and then somebody else entered her body, and she was able to recall memories and tell people's names and just like intimate information that only a family member would have. And the court, and she was killed by her in-laws, the other girl, and she took over this girl's body. And the court even heard her out, but they were like, "Hey, there's not enough evidence to prove that they actually killed you, right?" It was kind of shady the way that she died, but the idea that she was able to go into this other body and she lived the rest of her life as that other person. So it's like how I mentioned earlier. Sometimes I think, oh, is it all bullshit? But then there's these aspects of reality, and I'm not saying it's all paranormal because I've had weird experiences. I've seen UFOs. I haven't seen Bigfoot or anything like that, but I've had weird encounters and stuff. There is something else to this reality. And it feels like there's something else, that there's something spiritual, there's something metaphysical. And whether you choose to believe it or not, right? If you want to be, how you're saying, straight facts, science, or seance, as I like to call it, trust the seance. I mean, it's if you look at it, bro. I mean, Manly P. Hall wrote about this. It's like the alchemist in his cave, and now the alchemist is not in a cave anymore. He's just surrounded by 4 walls and pretty much a modern office, and that's exactly what it is. I think that there's an evolution, and how you're saying, Jay Widener put it beautifully on my show. He said that they take alchemical technology and they just turn into like what we have now. They take alchemical ancient texts of technology of some sort, and they are able to manifest that into a phone or this camera or this computer or whatever it is, and they leverage that to their benefit. I absolutely do believe that how you're saying with this whole AI narrative, it is. Look at it now, bro. There are people in the truther community who are falling for AI art, like AI generated art. They think that it's
that's like a Ouija board. It's like
100%.
calling upon the AI to create something for you.
Yeah, 100%.
No, I mean, I'm not bashing it. It's a really cool technology. I kind of like it too much. I really do. And chatbot GPT.
Have you tried that? I've never tried it.
Yes, I have. And I've noticed that the evolution of it is changing. It's getting more and more woke because the computer people who are creating it, they're realizing, oh, we need to change it because it's being too racist or whatnot.
Really?
So we're seeing them change our culture in real time, because all these kids, like, instead of writing essays themselves these days, they simply go to ChatGPT, put in the essay prompt, writes it all for them. So this is in the future going to be dictating our reality and how we see the world completely. Chatbot GPT is not some little thing that's going to go away. It's just going to keep evolving 100%.
Whoa.
It's revolutionary. But I'm still aware of some chatbot GPTs that are more like based, you could say. So they're out there, but you got to find them. You got to dig. I'm a part of a Telegram group actually that has access to one. And they're really cool.
That's because I saw that. I think I saw somebody that the chat GPT was telling him that Joe Biden was like a great leader or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. It won't say anything bad about Trump, but we'll say like some weird Stalin-esque poem about Biden, you know.
And you ever heard of Rocco's basilisk? You ever heard about that?
No, I haven't.
So because the archetype of the Frankenstein, right? The golem, which goes back to Kabbalah and mysticism, a man animated out of magic, homunculus, whatever it is. They serve a purpose. They die. The golem is resurrected every single day. So the phoenix, and in that story, the creation always goes out of control. It always tries to kill its creator. And in some versions of the golem kills the entire village. It goes on a rampage. Typical Frankenstein, where Frankenstein, the Frankenstein's monster is following him around. It's like, hey, I'm gonna murder everybody that you've ever loved, right? Because you've put me in this position where I'm gonna be alone. He learns, right? He's constantly evolving. Frankenstein's monster. That's the Terminator, right? The Terminator, the AI goes, it goes out of control.
Geordie Rose, who owns D-Wave, which is the head of quantum computing, he said this too. He straight up called it a demon. Like, it is like summoning a demon.
Elon Musk too
said the same thing. You already know.
So the Roko's basilisk is this idea, this thought experiment where, and it goes back to what I'm talking about with the truther community, where by you just even thinking about stopping this AI, this metaphysical boogeyman in the future, it's already won.
Yes, and they actually already have that technology from the research I've done, because the World Economic Forum, they recently met at Davos. And one of the, they always talk about the technology that's on the horizon, but usually that technology is like already there in like DARPA programs, but they're just now like slowly releasing it to the public. And one of the things they talk about, how in the future you'll be working at the office and your brain waves will be hooked up to a machine, and your boss will be able to know whether or not you're doing your work or thinking about something else. And in this dystopian cartoon, there was this woman going, "Oh, Jeff's really cute over there across the office," and then something comes up on her computer like the boss is alerted that she's having these erotic thoughts, and then she immediately goes back into her work. Then at the end of the day, they measure these brain waves, and they're like, all right, it looks like you spent like 90% of your brain waves on work, so that will give you a raise right here. But then the cartoon got even more creepy, and it showed this cartoon of this guy being taken away in handcuffs at the cubicles at the office because he was spreading misinformation online, and they were able to figure this out through tracking him and tracking his brainwaves. And I'm optimistic, saying that I don't even think the most like asleep or technologically transhumanist people out there would be into this. I think everyone is going to be against this. Don't you agree?
Not everyone's going to be against it, bro. I think that there are some people who want that. There are some people. And guess what? If you want to insert Elon Musk's Neuralink in your ass, for all I care, more power to you. As long as you don't force it on me, I'm good, bro. Like I'm like, fuck the government. The less government involvement, the better. And I think people should be able to do what they want with their bodies. Again, how I mentioned earlier, as long as they don't mess with the kids, right? Whatever happens between, and that's the problem that
they're going to mess with the kids. I mean, it's this push to getting both the parents working in the corporate office so that they're not around to raise them. That's in the book Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars too, where they talk about the two fundamental things to do is to break up the family unit, make sure both parents are too busy to take care of the kids, and make sure that the education system is really inadequate too.
Yes. And it goes back to this, what's that family?
Rothschilds,
Rockefeller-esque educational system, which we know they've played a role in all of this. And that's the problem, that a lot of these wealthy and powerful families have had their hand in the cookie jar of society.
That's why we need to do homeschooling. It's like, dude, I don't want to homeschool my kids, but my future kids, I'm going to have to. Like, what choice do I have? I can't send them to Rockefeller public school. Like, are you kidding me?
Listen, dude, I got kids, man. I mean, it's a different ball game when you're in the actual seat, right? Like there's certain things that, and that's why I said everyone's situation is different, but until you've actually lived that reality, can't really comment on it, man. I mean, I've seen a lot of things, and I always said this, that I've learned the hard way that having a podcast is like having kids. You don't tell people how they should raise their kids, and also you don't tell people how they should run their podcast, right? Because everybody has their own formula, and not until you're actually in that position are you going to know 100% what it's like. And it's easy to sometimes say it, and because I don't disagree with you, I think you're absolutely right. But there's a thing where it's like you're standing from the outside, oh, I wouldn't do that, until you're in that position. You're like, oh, fuck, now I got to do exactly what I went against. But it's because I think that, yeah, you're right. They are doing this on purpose. And that's why I mentioned at the beginning that it's all, I think that this entire thing of this great awakening, because it always seems like it does seem like everybody's waking up, right? I hate that term.
Woke, I know, me too.
But I don't think it's my job to wake anybody up. I'm here simply I can't have normal conversations with people anymore. But I'm here to have interesting conversation, what I deem interesting. That's why it's the one-on-one and not the one-on whatever else, right? It's what I want to learn about. And the reason I started this show was because I wasn't hearing certain topics that I wanted to hear about discussed.
Yeah, that's why I started my channel too. Exactly.
And that's my journey, but I'm not here to wake anybody up. I don't think it's my job. I think that everybody should, focus on their own path and focus on their own thing to really figure it out for themselves. I mean,
that's the thing is, like, I don't even think we need to directly focus on waking people up, because look at, like, for example, American politics right now, how like the radical left has really taken over the Democratic Party, not because they were trying to change people's minds, but because of just how loud and vocal they were.
mm-hmm.
It's like, I think it's time for us to stop being such like shrinking violets. Like, we need to just like speak our mind and talk about it. And then that's how things are going to change, just from people hearing our loud voices. Like, whoa, what is that over there? What is that frequency? I'm going to go check that out.
Yeah, but I'm an introvert, bro. Believe it or not.
Same.
I am reserved and I'm not confrontational. I live in Florida, bro, and the reason I'm not confrontational is because I always got a gun on me and I can't fight. So if I do pick a fight with somebody and I start getting my ass kicked, I'm gonna shoot them. So I'm not gonna pick up. That's why I don't road rage. There's especially here in Florida, I don't road rage. If somebody cuts me off, they cut me off, whatever. Now, if you're straight up disrespecting me, to my face, that's a whole different thing. But like the guy, like, hey, you looked at me wrong, or like you scuffed off my shoe, whatever. Like, why? What I'm saying? Like, some people are really confrontational. They pick fights.
Yeah, dude, I'm so glad I'm talking to you, because I had this question the other day. I feel like more people in Florida are like truthers. Is this this pattern I'm seeing? Is that true?
Yeah, because it's a different dimension, bro. That's what I was telling you about. There's something about the Florida man. There's something about the energy, and that's why people are drawn to this area. There's people come here to die, and the astrological alignment of Florida is the last. Yes, the last sign.
But yeah, the 12th sign of the zodiac.
Mm-hmm. And I think that these elites, like Flagler, which was John D. Rockefeller's right-hand man. He was the guy that was actually the brain behind Standard Oil. He developed everything that we know as that is Florida. The father of Miami and a lot of these. But he pushed, right? You had Henry Plant, who also developed the west coast of Florida and Tampa, St. Pete. And I think it's got to do with the Bermuda Triangle. One of the tips is here. You have Puerto Rico also part of that too. And I think these areas there's a lot of UFO sightings here. There's these areas of high strangeness where the veil is thinner. The Jinn live in open areas. Well, Florida's just a swamp, bro. A lot of the state is just open fucking land.
The most paranormal events I've had in my life has been in swamps. I've literally seen orbs in swamps at night. I never connected the two, that has some sort of esoteric property.
Yeah, 100%. There are these open areas. If you ever go into the Everglades, I'm not kidding when I said the water table here is high as well here in Florida with the caves and everything. And we recently did an interview of a Florida cave diver that actually blew up on YouTube. And it was this dude showing like, bro, like entire caverns underneath Florida. And it is the craziest thing ever because water, I believe, holds memory. And I think that by the water table being so high, I heard somebody say one time that Florida is good for manifestation. If it's true or not, I don't know. I'm not an occultist, so I don't know, but I do think that the elites, or whoever they are, the lizard people, whatever, tap into that. Whether you believe it or not, it doesn't matter, right? That's the famous quote by J.P. Morgan, where he's like, what is it? Millionaires don't use astrology, billionaires do. And he had the watch. Morgan said that. Yep. He had the watch that would track the astrological alignments. You ever seen that?
Astrolabes or whatever.
No, it was
Hillary spheres.
It was something like that. Let me pull it up here. But he had a watch.
I went to this when I was in London, I think it was, somewhere in England. I saw this old globe that instead of showing the countries, it showed the zodiac signs. And that was from like the 1500s, this globe.
Check this out. This is the hunt for JP Morgan's lost pocket watch. Oh. And it's this watch, but check out how trippy this is. It's got all the zodiac signs on it. It's got all the months and everything. And see here.
See, what is a practical usage? You would open that up and be like, oh, we have a full moon in Pisces. That's good. I guess that would be practical.
It weighed 1.75 pounds solid gold.
Well, is that what it would tell him? It would be like, all right now Saturn is in Capricorn. Is that what it would tell him?
Listen, dude. Again, these people, talismanic magic. It involves it heavily on the positions of the planets and everything in the sky, so you're able to invoke certain energies within. This watch is probably a talisman of some sorts, and they wear it proudly. They use it in order to. They believe that, and maybe by that belief, how I mentioned earlier about the zombies and the belief that it's real in society, therefore it becomes real.
I know. I took a zombie literature class in college, and we talked about how in Haiti they actually have real life zombies there, and it reminds me of MK Ultra, because the thing was, it was all about
That's
controlling
exactly
the
what it
people to
is.
do your bidding. That's why MK Ultra is a thing. It's real. It exists.
Yeah, exactly. It's the OG MK Ultra, and that's what they've been wanting to do with. That's what they do with movies and everything else. They
Yeah, Edward Bernays' nephew works at Netflix, and
Who's
then
that?
Netflix. So Edward Bernays is like the father of social engineering. He was paid by the Rothschilds during World War One to get Britain into the war with Germany. And Edward Bernays, he's the one who made up like Freedom Smokes or something. He got women into smoking cigarettes. They paid, like, the cigarette companies paid him to do those sort of advertisements. He was the mind behind the idea of women shaming men who didn't want to go to war. They would give them these roses saying you're a coward, basically, if you didn't want to go to war, and like laugh at them. So he came up with all these weird psychological tricks to get the people to do whatever he wanted. And
Whoa.
his relative works at Netflix now.
If we understand the mechanism and motives of the group mind, it is now possible to control and regiment the masses according to our will without them knowing it. And that's Edward Bernays. I never heard about this guy, but
Yeah,
writes
he's seriously the
propaganda.
grandfather of social and of propaganda. And he was paid by the Rothschilds. And then I opened up this book recently, Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. And again, I saw that name. The Rothschilds were paying for these studies to social engineer people. And it's like people get things confused. Like, they almost seem like they think like the Rothschilds directly do things, but no, they pay other people to get things done.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the 48 laws of power, is never get your hands dirty. And it
Mm-hmm.
reminds me of George Soros too. Like, George Soros will give a bunch of money to BLM. It's because, again, that they want us fighting a culture war instead of a class war.
Yeah, I'm 100% on that. The even the pharmaceutical industry, it's all ruled by, and usually goes back to one company, right? Either BlackRock or Vanguard, or
Vanguard.
a lot of these conglomerates.
Yeah, like Larry Fink, he owns BlackRock, and he does something called the ESG score. And it's why all these companies are going so woke right now. And people think they're going broke, but no, they're not, because they're getting subsidies from BlackRock if they push this super progressive ideology, like putting rainbow flags in their logos. They get some points. If they talk about BLM, they'll get more points from BlackRock. And it's like, do you really think Larry Fink cares about like social justice? Hell no. It's getting people looking down instead of up.
Yeah, and that's the thing, dude. They know how to play the system because they created it, right?
Yeah, they've had their heads chopped off so many times. They're like, okay, we know what not to do now, because they've seen in history, it's always the academic elite that overthrow us, from Simone Bolivar to the French Revolution to the Russian Revolution. So those are the people that are the most gung-ho SJWs, and that's all on purpose. It's like, I know, dude, I'm not saying I'm like some academic elite, but I got the whole liberal arts degree bullshit. And I felt like, looking back on it, I was programmed to be super into these things. And all my professors, they were super SJWs as well. Like, they were just straight communists. Like, my one evolutionary professor, he's like, yeah, I spent a few years in Russia because I'm a communist, I'm a Marxist, and during the Soviet Union. And I thought he was cool. I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool that you did that. Like, it was a part of the whole culture there.
Wow. Yeah, I've had encounters with professors. Not all of them are dicks, but some of them are dicks. Like, some of them are assholes, and again, that goes back to that herd mentality, that crowd psychology that they're in all the time. Yeah, it's like the Finding Nemo birds. My. Like, they're all together. That's all. I mean, that's what they do. And what made you like shift? What was the nail in the coffin for you?
Dude, it was just getting my ass kicked by the real world. Because I get out of college, I'm like, hey, who wants to hire me? I got a degree. No one cares. So I ended up just being a barista for years, like barely able to afford being able to eat. And I'm like, something's not right. Something's really wrong right now. And just I remember working at this really diverse like coffee shop that was cool. It was like in Cleveland. It was like a good mixture of like black people, white people, Asian people, all getting together, all getting along great. And then it got to a point where it just got like way too hood. Like I got like robbed at gunpoint while working there. They took us down to the basement, made us give them the money in the safe. And I'm just like, man, like sometimes it's just too much. And I don't want to sound like racist or anything, because it's like I would hang out with the black people there. They would invite me over to the hood. They'd like whip out their guns and we'd play beer pong and stuff. So it's like I'm cool with those people, but at the same time, it's like you got to have a nice balance in your society. You need to have some sort of homogeny, like some sort of like majority, I guess, group of people. You know.
Mm, like a melting pot type of thing, but
Well, a melting pot only works so far as long as you keep like the ratios right. Like, I don't think that it's going to be beneficial if it becomes a minority majority country.
but that's the thing. People gravitate towards their own, which is again part of the design of this.
Yes. And the thing is,
the society.
and that's why it's like social engineering. You don't need to push it on people. People will naturally go birds to a feather, flock together. But then they stigmatize that by saying, oh, well, that's segregation. When it's like, is it really though? When people just want to like stick with their own in a way, because then that makes you appreciate other cultures more if you're not around them all the time. But then you decide on your own volition to go visit them in their neck of the woods. Then they visit you in your neck of the woods. Then you all go home at the end of the day. Like that's why I like Singapore, and like Singapore is a very homogenous culture, but they love seeing foreigners. They're like, "Oh, welcome, welcome, have our food and cuisine, and check out our."
It's also because you're white, so I mean they're gonna be like drawn to you. Like I have a friend of mine that lives in Vietnam, and he's white, and they see a white person, and it's like, holy shit, it's a white person. I'm sure it'd be the same for a black guy, but yeah, I don't even look at people's race. I think that's part of the narrative. If you're a good person and you treat me well and I vibe with you, then we're friendly. And I have black friends. I'm Hispanic, so I have all types of friends. I have white friends. I have Asian friends. I have all types of friends. And there is prejudice, right? With certain people, like, oh, well, some people, some black people are ghetto, right? More they're hood or whatever it is, that they're gonna rob you, or like all these, and that's part of that. What you're talking about, this social engineering that they've put in society in order to separate people even more.
But
And
think about it. Or sorry, go on.
no, and I'm saying that the whole thing with BLM and the systematic racism, I think that they are onto something when it comes to that, because if you look at the way that some black neighborhoods are put, the absence of a father, they are forced to rob, so therefore when they go to jail, they become a cog in the system. I 100% am aware of that, and I think one of the loopholes for they didn't really fully abolish slavery, because once you become a criminal and you're convicted, you become a slave. You literally become, and the incarceration system, the jail system, is one of the most profitable. It's all privately owned.
Yeah.
I mean, how the fuck is that okay?
Criminals can lower their sentences if they donate their bone marrow and their organs. Organ harvesting
Really?
is alive and well. Oh yeah, look into it. Like
Dude.
That's a new thing that they just passed. And but what I'm saying is, like, look at like a video from like Martin Luther King talking, and like all the black people were wearing suits, like their family units were together. And that was before the super hardcore pushing of social engineering. Like, oh, everyone's racist, blah, blah, blah. If you just let people be, they thrive. If the government let us be, we would thrive, because they say that so much progress has happened, but on literally every single metric, the minorities in this country are doing way worse. Whether it's the family units, whether it's the educational scores. So something ain't working right now, all right? Maybe things were better back then. And it's like, I hate to say back then, I hate to say like a return to something, because what we need is something new, something that just works. Because obviously that stuff didn't work back then either, because racism was still prevalent. And then it turned us into the society we have today, where we're more divided than ever. So it's like we need to not just return to something that was there before, but have it be something new that values like the sort of archetypal idea of tradition.
Yeah. No, I think that, and if you really think about it, racism wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
It really wasn't. I mean, it was one person's lifetime ago that they were. My great grandma was born in the 1930s. She's still around. So, I mean, she lived through all that. And, well, I mean, I'm Puerto Rican. She lives in Puerto Rico. But I'm saying that for anybody who's still, there's people still alive from that era. Whether I mean, the town that I live in, dude, I mean, some people are racist as fuck still.
Well, what could really bind us is just having like spirituality that we all agree in. Because at that point, if we're all on the same page with that, like a white person will see a bunch of Latin Americans going to church and be like, "Man, I love these Latinos. Like they're so like spiritual and family oriented." Like
I
that's
love
what's
all
gonna
these
break
black
through.
people. They're great.
Yeah, they're so wonderful. Yeah, I hate it when Republicans say that shit. But that's the only thing that's really gonna bind us. Because what's our religion now? The religion of like Dr. Fauci. Like, how is that gonna come? Like,
Whatever happened to that guy?
I feel like he's in hiding right now. I mean, I don't see him at all anymore. And it's like, because if things get real bad, man, it's like people are gonna have to like hang Albert Bourla, the CEO of Pfizer. People are gonna have to like do something. And I have this idea, like, what if they feed us these people? They feed them to the masses to make us think that everything's okay. We've dealt with the problem, but then the real people behind the scenes are still pulling the strings.
I don't think that's gonna happen, and it might. I mean, it might happen where they need a scapegoat, and maybe that's part of the ritual, where they and the whole scapegoat is you sacrifice one, and then you give one up and you let them go. And I think maybe that's part of this.
I mean, dude, it worked with Jeffrey Epstein. It got people to like stop questioning that, and like they indicted Ghislaine Maxwell. And she was the first person to get in trouble for pimping out, prostitutes and nobody. And people just accept it.
That was one of like the craziest things where we all know it's bullshit, but then we all don't do anything about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and that shows you right then and there that it's going to continue to be the way that it is. And I'm not trying to be like doom and gloom, like, oh, there's nothing that we can do. I think there is a lot we can do. If we're able to, how you say, shift the way we think. Now, if that's through religion, if that's through culture, if that's through whatever, I don't have the answer to that, to be 100%. I don't think that anyone has the answer. I think that throughout history, there's always been, this is the end of the world type of thinking. Always. There's always been something, some event in 2020, we thought the world was going to end, bro. We thought we were scared. For like the first few months, we were seeing the videos of people dropping. Like, oh shit, this is for real. This is serious. And then you knew someone who knew somebody who had gotten it, and they were like really bad. And you're like, damn, this is crazy. Well, they were probably saying the same thing in 1929 when the stock market crashed and people were killing themselves and there was no money and people were literally starving to death. There was cannibalism during, I forgot what I think it was during the 50s in Russia or Germany. At one of those times where like they were literally selling human meat on markets because people were starving to death. And I have to look up exactly which event that was in history, but I think that this is always going to be a thing. And now our thing is, what's our thing now? The core has stopped spinning.
Isn't it so funny how like the media, they act like that, like during COVID, they always act so urgent, so hysterical, but so effective. Like they made it sound like if you didn't get the vaccine, you're just going to die. Like no questions asked. And almost everyone fell for it because it's like, it's insane, which makes it very easy to see through if you're in the know, but then it also makes it very effective if you're just not in the know.
And dude, I mean, I've had a bunch of people reach out to me that regretted it, right? Taking it. I've had friends and family like, oh, why didn't you stop me? I'm like, you're the one that literally told me I was a lost cause, that I was going to die, right? That was the whole thing. Oh, you're going to die. You're so selfish. Like that reverse psychology that they were using, that programming by trauma. Like, oh, well, look at so-and-so. They went to the hospital. They almost died. I was like, yeah, he's fucking 500 pounds, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like the guy, that was the least of his worries, and it's just piled on top of that. But yeah, man. And I think I thought that this narrative, since it crumbled and people were like, oh, wait, they literally sold us something that was just bogus. They were a placebo, or it was just a money grab. I thought that would wake people up. There's still some people buying the narrative, bro. And that's why I say, like, it's not even your job to try and turn them. It's just let nature take its course, right? Survival of the fittest. And eventually it's gonna come to light in some form and for some people it might be too late, bro. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like it might come too late. And some people, how they've always told us, learn the hard way.
Mhm.
And that's just the way that reality works. I mean, you can't turn everybody, right? You can't.
Yeah, I mean, with this Darwinian thing that's going on, it's like maybe in the future we're gonna have a bunch of people who have really good pattern recognition because those are the people that survived all the psyops. And it kind of reminds me of like, I've noticed lately, like all these people that have been banned off of all these platforms, they're the ones who are like the best live streamers. They're the ones who like have their own like little communities and apps where people just pay them directly. And it's like, wow, it seems like them getting banned just made them even better. Like us being ostracized just makes us even better. Like we're gonna go on and like fulfill our genes probably. And
Yeah.
yeah.
No, yeah, and I agree with you. I think that once you're able to adapt, and that's the beautiful thing about podcasting, that it's people need to understand that it's uncensorable. As long as you have a podcasting 2.0 app, they can deplatform you. They can take you off of Spotify or Google, whatever, but they can't take. It's always going to be there, and I don't know how much longer that's going to last,
Yeah.
but
Because I don't know if you heard this conspiracy. A lot of people are talking about it, saying that they're going to shut down the internet for like a week and then it's going to come back on and it's going to be way more like censored than it was before. Have you been hearing this from like a solar flare coming? Because we had the Carrington event in the 1800s, which wiped out all the little bit of electricity that we had. Yeah, look up the Carrington event. And people are saying, things happen in cycles. It's actually called isometric analysis, where you look at certain patterns in history, how they come back up again, just like the pandemic. Every 100 years, it seems like we have some sort of wide scale pandemic. And it's the same thing with this Carrington event, where we're due for a wide scale solar flare, a coronal mass ejection that'll just wipe out everything.
yeah, how much technology do we have in 1815?
I know, that's the thing, that there wasn't much, but it knocked it all out. And scientists will say, I don't know if we can trust scientists these days, but they say that like a solar flare would knock out all of our electricity.
This is more fear porn, bro. I think. I don't think, and I was literally talking to somebody about this the other day, where when they talk about the whole 5 billion years and all this stuff, and the Big Bang was made by some priest at the Vatican, I believe, and I think it's part of making you feel smaller than you actually are, right? By you're just a speck of dust in the middle of nothing. I'm not saying that space is fake. I believe that it's not what we've been led to believe it is. I think that it's something much different, and that's what they're holding back from us. And I believe that we should be looking at the bottom of our oceans more than anything for other realities or something. I mean, if you talked about Jelaine I call her Ghislaine. Is that right or not?
I used to call her Ghislaine too, and then I stopped doing that. So yeah, now I know.
So Ghislaine and all those guys, they had submarine licenses.
Yes.
And
yep, Epstein's Island had a docking bay for the submarine.
Yeah, dude. And one of the clips that I did with a buddy of mine, I think it's got like 100,000 clicks now. People were making fun of us because we were talking about how maybe perhaps
there's the tunnels down there. Dude, I made a video. I got 70,000 views off it talking about how there's tunnels on Little St. James.
Yeah, dude. It's the esoteric that we got to be worried about, not the exoteric bullshit that they put out. And I want to see the 102,000 views, bro. And I want to see those submarine logs. That's what I want to see. And
yeah, we have pictures of Stephen Hawking on that submarine with Ghislaine Maxwell. So we got that picture evidence there. Look it up, Stephen Hawking and Ghislaine Maxwell on her submarine. She was a part of the Terra Mar project, Ghislaine Maxwell, which was exploring the oceans and all that stuff. And then like we see all these like corridors opening on Little St. James that actually lead to little sections that are underground. So now we ask the question, like, how far do those go? Not only that, but someone snuck onto Little St. James and they looked through the window and he's like, yeah, I saw a little trap door in the middle that looked like it led to underground. And not only that, but there were little rings surrounding the temple on Little St. James. And I connected that in my video to rings that construction guys use, where they hook that to chains, these giant cement blocks when they're laying down pieces of like tunnels and stuff that are underground. And we can see those rings all around the temple. Now, the answer to that is like maybe those rings were set in place to keep the roof from falling off. So it was like connected by a rope during those like high windstorms that area suffers from. So, but who knows?
So you think they had Stephen Hawking slinging dick on Epstein Island?
I can see it. I mean, that dude, he gets around. I mean, he's hooked up. He had a wife and then left her for somebody else, like the nurse.
What?
Dude, there was a whole group of girls that were like drooling over Stephen Hawking. It doesn't matter who you are. If you're a man with some level of influence, you're going to have girls having crushes on you.
That prestige, bro. Damn. Yeah. He was pulling.
Yeah. He was not an incel, guys.
Wait, is that a young Stephen Hawking? Is that what he looked like?
Yeah. Because he used to be able to walk around on crutches a little bit. And his wife's not bad looking.
He wasn't a bad looking guy either. I mean, in his prime. What was the disease that he had? What kind of condition did he have?
Man, I forget. But I mean, maybe his dick could work. It seems like it could.
Yeah. Damn, bro, this dude was slaying that poon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think that this reality that we live in, it's like how Tripoli says, it's a haunted house. Maybe some people are here for texture and just as a decoration on the wall or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
but
I call it a hall of mirrors because it like you think the reality will be one way and it shows you back a distortion and you think the distortion is real.
Yeah. And you start to accept that reality. That's some people's perception, and perception is one of the most important things, because how you're saying, they look in the mirror, they start seeing that warped perception, that warped image of themselves, and they start to accept that as themselves. When in reality, I think everyone's beautiful, bro. I think we should begin with to end this on like a high note, right? And because we've talked a lot about a lot of dark things, just love each other, right? Love each other. Don't be a piece of shit. Treat everybody equally. And that's my philosophy, man. As long as you respect me, I respect you. And as long as we can have a good civilized conversation, it's all good.
That's why it's so important to understand, like, we all come from God. We all come from source, and we're just in these like temporary material bodies. We should all understand at the end of the day.
You have any concluding thoughts that you want to share and leave the people with, bro?
Man, just subscribe to my YouTube channel, Brett Lewis, obviously. And I would say that the power is always inside you. Like, you can get to a certain level where, like, they say you're the sum of the 5 people that you're around. But remember, Jesus hung out with prostitutes. That doesn't mean that Jesus was a prostitute. Like, you can get yourself to a level where not even they affect you, because we are in this world, but not of it.
Nice. Jesus was not a prostitute, everybody.
Yeah.
Keep that in mind. So send me your links, bro. I'll post those in the description. This was fun. We'll do it again soon. And make sure to follow me on social media at the Hold On Podcast. YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, whatever. I'm everywhere. Main account is on Instagram. Check me out. If you're listening to this on YouTube, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, share the episode. I mean, if you're not gonna, this is a value for value show. I do have the Occultist Monday, a comic book. I do have a Patreon, patreon.com/the1on podcast. And if you're not gonna do any of that other stuff, at least share the show with somebody and spread the word. Leave us a 5-star review anywhere you're listening to it. And as always, see you guys on the other side.